So, welcome everyone for joining us today. We're glad that you're able to make it. And so, what I'm going to be going over today will sort of be a nice start to the whole symposium on discussing some of the most common forms of social media, some of their uses, and then our later speakers will be getting into it a little more deeply. And so, feel free to tweet during this. If you would like, you can move up to the tables up here so we can all be a bit more cozy and we won't judge you if you have to leave early. So I'll be talking about the benefit of the selfie and how social media is sometimes seen as a distraction, but is it really? And so right here we have a selfie I took in my ecology lab a couple months ago. We got Jake Bard there in the middle, who is another student at the University of Arkansas, and he has people tweet for him, so he's pretty good with all this stuff. So what I'll be talking about today, a lot of outreach. I'll be discussing a little bit into my blogging and also talking about other things that can be useful for grad students during their careers, such as crowdfunding, networking, collaboration, and also, most importantly, how to make friends. And so as far as your options go, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Tumblr are the biggest ones that we'll be talking about, but there's about a million more. Morgan has a great graph in his presentation about all that. And so I'm going to start this off with a story. And our story begins on Snake Island in Macedonia. And so recently there was a Serbian herpetologist who was going along this island tagging snakes and kind of working on her own project when she came across something a little bit out of the ordinary. And of course, as Indiana Jones would say, why did it have to be snakes? And so what she found was this. We have a snake and then inside of it a centipede. She published a great paper with her collaborators, 2 fangs good, 100 legs better. Juvenile viper devoured by an adult centipede it had ingested. And so on this island, you have the bigger snakes that are able to take down the rodents and other small mammals, but then the kind of wimpier snakes have to settle for less suitable prey, like a centipede. And so this one bit the centipede, swallowed it, but then the centipede apparently survived for long enough to then just rip through this thing. It was reported to have either pushed the bones away or dissolved them or ate them or something because there were no bones. There was just a cloak around the centipede of the snake itself. And so the paper itself is just phenomenal. It's so much fun to read. It's a great account of natural history. And so I first saw this paper on a Myriapoda listserv. And so I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. So I read it real quick. It had this nice picture, so I kind of took it out of the paper, put it up on Twitter, and tweeted it out. And so that was at 1 a.m., so I did this, and then I went to bed to see what would happen in the morning. Just kidding, I go to bed at like 3. It's great. And so within a couple days, it had accumulated about 38 retweets, and then it kept spreading. The next day after I first posted this, I got a little message from Nidhi Subaraman, who works for NBC News, their digital science news, and she had kind of sent me a message that, hey, I wrote this up into an article if you would want to tweet it out. It's like, this is awesome. I love it whenever we get centipede or millipede stuff kind of out into the broader world because people don't normally care about them, even though they're the best arthropods. And so she writes the story up, and then it starts spreading. It gets picked up by the Huffington Post, shared on Facebook 714 times, gets picked up by places like National Geographic's Digital News. We get 434 more tweets from this article. You get Live Science picking it up. And then you also get IO9, who files it under Holy Crap, WTF. And then if you look at how many views this article got, over 100,000. And so what was really interesting about this came out, this was the first issue of the first volume of a Ecologia Montenegrino. And so it's based in the former Yugoslavia and kind of deals with the biota found over there. And so I would have never found this paper if not for the listserv, and this just blew up. I don't know if they were really expecting it to go that way, but when you get this cool story and just a good way to get it out there, you can do a lot with social media and really just spreading the message. And so as far as outreach is concerned, they did pretty well. Now, it might not always be that easy. You're not going to have people just coming up to you and asking you about your science and wanting to help you out. But there are ways to kind of tap into this network and really get your message out to people. And so I've had my blog, Normal Biology, for about 4 years now. And so it's done moderately well. I've gotten about 120,000 views on it. I've written 155 posts so far. And they mainly concern my research, sometimes life as a grad student, and then some write-ups of other scientists that I've come across in my studies, especially with millipedes. And so my top few posts that I've had viewed so far has been one about the wheel bug, one about Ohio millipedes, and another about the Luna moth, which is just really pretty, so of course people like that. And so from that, I've been contacted a couple times by just the general public with questions, or if someone sees a wheel bug and they never knew what it was, when you tell them what it is, they just think it's either fantastic or really scary, and they want to share that story. So people just comment on it from time to time of their experience with the wheel bug. Last year, I wrote a little post in response to an editorial in the Canadian Entomology Bulletin, which kind of disparaged social media and was written by someone who has actually never used it. So it was frustrating, to say the least. So Chris Buttle and a couple of his collaborators kind of wrote their own response and cited that blog post, as well as another student who's now based in Oxford doing research on blueberries. With my own blog post and my research, this summer I was able to do a collecting trip to Ohio and collect a bunch of millipedes. I was contacted by The Conversation, which is a UK-based website, and I wrote up a little bit about my studies there, and that kind of got the message out on millipedes, which is really the main thing that I try to do with my social media. I was also later contacted by the press office at the University of Arkansas to later do a photo spread in their little research magazine within the university of just all these millipedes that are native to Arkansas. And so that's really exciting as well. So we're spreading science. That's pretty cool. But are we really connecting? And so I came across this on Tumblr last week. I was just kind of sitting in the grad room going down through various photos that were on the site, and this just stopped me in my tracks. Like, you don't get this emotional connection when you just write a paper and send it off. But this street art that I have no idea where it came from, because Tumblr, it's a bit hard to source things, but this made me stop and think. And so if anyone doesn't know what this creature is, this is the thylacine. It went extinct in 1936. That was when the last known specimen died in a zoo. And it's just a very powerful, to me, just really in-your-face view of extinction and these things that, hey, we don't see them anymore. It's really easy to forget, but these things are happening all the time and they continue to happen. And what's really great about social media is you can put that out there and people are receptive to it. Especially on Tumblr, people are just more willing to put themselves out there and be vulnerable and say, hey, this is cool, or hey, this is important. And so this particular photo, when it was posted, got over 500 shares, and who knows where it went from there. But this was just, for me, a really powerful example of how to do this outreach very well. And so connecting emotionally relies on people being receptive to our efforts. So the main question then is, will they be? Should we invest this time in it? Luckily, the NSF just came out with their science and engineering indicators for 2014. And so they list some pretty good news for us. 4 out of 5 Americans say that they are interested in new scientific discoveries. Awesome. The internet has surpassed television as Americans' primary source for information about science and technology. And if you've seen channels like Discovery Channel or Animal Planet lately, that's a good thing. We're getting now much better science content online than we are on those channels at all. It's trash. And thirdly, Americans are more likely to have a great deal of confidence in leaders of both the scientific community and the medical community than in leaders of any group except the military. And so this survey focused on Americans, but these hold true in most other countries as well. And so that leads us to the fact that we have the interest from the public. We have this technology to reach them like we've never had before. And we also have the reputation for them to believe us, connect with us, and trust us on this. So we need to be using it. Do outreach. The public is your ally, and not only that, they can also be your job security. We had the ECN meeting before ESA this week, and we just heard over and over how the administration didn't really understand why the museum was there or its importance. Well, if you're able to really connect with the public and show them what you have there, that is a powerful strength to have, because if they come to cut your funding, you can just kind of tell everyone, hey, we might not be able to help you out much longer, and they will respond. They will bombard people with letters, tweets, whatever you want. And so that's how you might be able to keep your job. But you also have to be proactive with this. You have to kind of have a plan and really commit yourself to putting quality content out there. You don't want to just go for quality and be sending out a lot of stuff that's just kind of and not very fun. And so a really good example of this has been the Brain Scoop. If you've never seen this channel, go watch it. It is the best thing on YouTube. And so Emily Grassley, she finished her undergrad at the University of Montana, but during her senior year, she found the Zoological Museum on campus and fell in love with it. So then she started doing an online master's in museum studies and started volunteering in the museum. Well, she met up with Hank Green of the Vlogbrothers, who also lives in Missoula, Montana, and they kind of collaborated on this, and eventually that led to making this YouTube channel. About 6 months after that, she was then invited by the Field Museum to go there and do it, and she has a great job title now, Chief Curiosity Correspondent. And so moving on a little bit, which with budget cuts lately and just with grad students always kind of scrambling around to try to make sure they can fund their project, especially if it's not really connected to anything that could be, you're going to get money for this definitely, but hey, it's good for science, it's foundational. Crowdfunding can be a really powerful tool. The biggest one is Kickstarter, but there are also some that are focused more on science and other areas like Experiment and Rocket Hub. So essentially for crowdfunding, you get your plan for what science you're going to do, you throw it out there, you give everyone a budget breakdown and tell people why it's important, and then people will just give you money for that. And then pretty much you just need to make sure to update them on what's happening, and then you can also give them certain perks as well, like a photo from the field or something like that. And so it allows people to connect directly with science and with funding science. And so there's a neat case study here. This was a student who was studying the spiders of Yasuni in Ecuador. And so on Tumblr, she's Bug Girl, and we have another Bug Girl in the room as well. And so this is actually Andrea Haberkern, and she's a student out in California. She has a big following on Tumblr, 160,000, and I talked with her about her project, and she was estimating that 70% of her pledges were coming in from people who knew her from Tumblr. And so along with that, she was sending thank you emails and posting a picture of a spider every time someone donated to kind of show them that, hey, she really appreciates their help. She made sure to kind of avoid just spamming it everywhere. And as for the conditions that the site imposes on projects, the site takes a 7% cut for processing fees, and also she only gets the money if her goal was reached. And so she was looking for $5,000. That was her goal. She had 60 days to do this, and eventually she had 170 backers and was able to raise $5,427. And so now she didn't have funding in her lab when she started as a grad student, but now she's able to do this project on something that she's really interested in. And so another thing that you want to do with social media is build your presence. Ed Yong, the science writer, has described Twitter as a serendipity engine, and for anyone who has used it for a good amount of time, you probably know that's pretty true. I found it to be true myself. It opens a lot of doors for collaboration. Just last week, I received a couple vials of millipedes from Canada because I had met someone on Twitter, and she knew that I was interested in millipedes, and she agreed to collect them for me. It also can make conferences a little bit less awkward. Last year, I came to ESA for the first time, and really the only people I knew were the ones I knew from Twitter, and it was great to finally meet them in life as real people. We had our tweet up the other night, and we had about 30 people there, and it was a blast. A lot of us were there talking for about 4 hours. And another this might even be the most important part of these social networks for grad students. It gives you a support network. There is just a phenomenal community of grad students on Twitter, and it's not only entomology. Other sciences, you get the humanities. I follow a couple of historian grad students, and it's also very nice to kind of get different types of content and a different perspective, too. You can talk about things that maybe you don't want to talk about with the students at your own university for whatever reason. And it also really drives it home that imposter syndrome, if you ever feel like you're inadequate and that you're just kind of faking your way through it, you're definitely not alone with that. You see people tweeting about that all the time. We all experience that, and it's just nice to know that you're not alone in that. Another very important thing, and Nash Turley in particular, if you don't follow him, you should. He's been tweeting a lot, especially in the past year, about mental health for grad students. And so this is something that we never really talk about, and we just kind of ignore it or just say, oh, well, it's science. You should be able to do science and separate yourself from your emotions, which we all know isn't true. And so he recently wrote a very good blog post on this, so I'm pulling this directly from the post. In one study of over 3,000 international graduate students, 44% say that they had mental health issues that significantly affected their well-being or their academic performance. In addition, these lead to graver health concerns, most dramatically suicide, which among college students across 10 universities was found to be highest among graduate students. And so this was a survey of only international graduate students, but I'm sure this is the same for domestic graduate students as well. This is a large portion that they might have moved 1,000 miles away, and they don't really have that support group that they've always had. And so, at least for me, especially after this past summer, which was pretty terrible for me, I found out that I have a great community on Twitter, and I was blown away by their kindness, and that was just supremely helpful. We can't all be professors. A lot of the times you might kind of feel like the only thing you hear about is, oh, tenure track positions, jobs, professorships. But there's a lot more out there. In particular, Gwen Pearson's Lunch and Learn the other day on science writing had over 100 attendants. That's a pretty good interest. And so maybe some of these people would be interested in writing for IO9 or a site like BuzzFeed, which you might think just gives you a quiz so that you know which one of Taylor Swift's cats you're most similar to. But, I mean, this site has a huge reach, and things go viral like that. But in a recent job posting that they put out there, one of the things they wanted in their applicants was a social media presence. If you don't have that and you want to break into science writing or something else that's not academia, you're going to be out of luck. And so you want to start with that early on and kind of get that out there and get ahead of the game. Now, there are still significant hurdles. Social media is pretty new. About 10 years ago, we didn't really have much. Google just celebrated their 10th birthday yesterday, I think I heard. And also, if you're at a university and you kind of want to start a blog for the department or something, there are going to be hurdles to jump through. I tried to do this at the University of Arkansas, and for whatever administrative reasons, they couldn't do it. It was very weird. And so what you can do instead is start a blog for your particular lab. We did this in the Dowling lab, where I'm a student, and you can also see other examples online. The Dean's Lab out of Pennsylvania State University, the Frost Museum, the Lyman Museum, and also Jointed Legs, a recent addition by Paul Merrick at the Virginia Tech, and he studies millipedes. So it's a pretty great blog. Now, you also get the perceptions that social media is a waste of time, it's a distraction, and that it takes too much time to generate content. And so should scientists even be on social media? And you'll hear these a lot. This was a professor at Columbia who recently tweeted that if you're on Twitter and you think you're a scientist, you're really an ex-scientist. And so, of course, complaining on Twitter about Twitter is kind of like going to some political convention and just saying, I disagree with all of you. And so that's what happened. And so he got a lot of pushback on this. And sometimes you see opinions like this, and you'll just look at your computer and think, why? Why am I here? Maybe I should just, step away and do like Ben here. But it's also important to remember that haters gonna hate. And so there will be these perceptions, but you shouldn't let that stop you. And so I responded to him that if you're not on Twitter, you're missing out on essential connections and conversations. And I think a lot of people in this room would know that to be true. And so what you want to do, and we want to encourage you to do, is to share your knowledge. Thanks to Morgan Jackson for this wonderful graphic. And just join in the University of Twitter. If you're not on social media, take a look and see if maybe it's something that would appeal to you, or if you don't like it, all right, that's okay. That's okay. But there are also different uses for different social medias. On Tumblr, it's very image-based, and it's a bit more of a disconnected network in a way. But it can also be a lot of fun. On Twitter, it's you're putting your science out there, and you also have room to be a little bit silly. If you follow me, you probably see a lot of pictures of cats and a lot of Taylor Swift tweets lately because her album just came out. But you also get a lot of millipedes and a lot of science, and that's a good way to kind of reach these communities that you've never had reached before. And it's easy to become insular in our communities. Even on social media, we can kind of get into our own filter bubbles. But you should be trying to reach out. And so I would encourage all of you to get a Twitter account or just get on yours right now and, turn your swag on. Thank you very much.